The morning it happened did not feel important at first. It felt like any other quiet morning where the world moves without asking you how you were doing. I was standing in the kitchen, holding a chipped mug that had once been white. The coffee inside had gone cold because I forgot to drink it. I was listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. That clock had been there longer than most people in my life. It kept time without caring who was. Falling behind. My phone buzzed on the counter. I did not look at it right away. I already knew who it would be. Or at least, I knew the kind of message it would carry. Lately, every message felt the same. A reminder, a warning. A quiet push to stay small. When I finally picked it up, my hands felt heavier than they should have. The screen lit up with a message from my sister-in-law Mara. Just a heads up, it said. We're making some changes. We'll talk later. That was it. No warmth, no explanation. Just enough words to make my chest tighten. I stared at the message for a long time. I read it again and again like maybe a different meaning would appear if I looked hard enough. It did not. The coffee stayed cold. The clock kept ticking. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. I told myself I was tired. I told myself I had been wrong before. But my body already knew something was wrong. By the time I drove over to the office, my shoulders were tight, and my jaw hurt from clenching it. The office building was small, nothing fancy. 2 floors. Beige walls. The kind of place people forget exists even when they drive past it every day. I had helped build that place. Not with bricks or money, but with hours, with weekends, with patience, with saying yes when I should have said no. Inside, the air smelled like printer ink and stale carpet. A few people nodded at me as I walked in. Their smiles were polite, but thin, different. Like they knew something I did not. That was when I saw my name missing. It was subtle at first. Just a small thing. The list of department heads on the wall near the conference room had been updated. New font. New layout. Names neatly aligned. My name was not there. I stood in front of that wall longer than made sense. People walked past me, talking about lunch plans, about deadlines, about nothing at all. No one stopped. No one asked if I was okay. I checked my email on my phone. Nothing new. No meeting invite. No explanation. Just silence. Then I heard laughter coming from the conference room. The door was slightly open. I did not mean to listen, but the sound carried. Mara's voice was clear. Confident. Comfortable. I think this is the right move, she said. We can't keep pretending she's capable. Not anymore. Someone else laughed softly. A man's voice. My brother. She won't fight it, he said. She never does. I felt something crack in my chest. Not loudly, not in a way that anyone else could hear. Just a quiet break. Like ice under too much weight. I stepped back from the door before they could see me. My heart was pounding. So hard it made my ears ring. My first instinct was to leave. To go back to my car. To drive somewhere far and quiet. And let the feeling pass. That was always my instinct. Leave. Avoid. Be the calm one. But my feet did not move. Instead, I opened the door. The room went quiet. They all looked at me. Mara, my brother. 2 managers. I had trained myself. Papers were spread out on the table. A folder sat in front of Mara, thick and organized. My name was on the tab. Mara smiled first. It was not a cruel smile. It was worse. It was the kind of smile you give someone when you think you are being kind by telling them bad news. Oh, she said. You're here. I nodded. I did not trust my voice yet. We were just discussing some updates, she continued. About roles, about direction. My brother leaned back in his chair. He did not look at me. He looked tired, bored, like this was a chore he wanted to finish. I finally spoke. My name is off the wall. The words came out flat. I was proud of that. I did not want to sound emotional. Emotion had never helped me with them. Mara folded her hands. Yes, about that. She paused. Too long. Like she was waiting for me to fill the silence. I did not We think it's time for a transition, she said. You've been under a lot of stress. Financially. Personally. We don't want you to feel overwhelmed. My brother nodded, still not looking at me. This is for your own good. For your own good. Those words have followed me my whole life. They sounded gentle. They felt heavy. I looked at the folder. What kind of transition? Mara slid the folder closer to me. We're moving you to a support role. Fewer hours. Less responsibility. And less pay, my brother added. I picked up the folder. My fingers shook just a little. Inside were charts, notes, plans I had never seen. Decisions made without me. Assumptions written like facts. At the bottom of the first page was a line. That made my stomach drop. Effective immediately. You didn't talk to me. I said. Mara sighed, like I was being difficult. We knew this would be hard for you. You didn't ask me. I said again. My brother finally looked up. His eyes were cold in a way I had not seen before. We didn't need to. That was the moment I understood something important. They were not worried about me. They were not trying to help me. They were done with me. I left the office without saying anything else. I did not trust myself to speak. The hallway felt longer than before. The walls seemed closer. When I pushed through the front door, the air outside felt too bright, too loud. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel until my breathing slowed. Weak. Broke. Incapable. They had never said those words to my face. They did not need to. They lived in every decision made without me. Every look that slid past me. Every quiet laugh behind a door. I drove home in silence. I did not turn on the radio. I did not call anyone. There was no one to call. When I walked into my apartment, the emptiness hit me hard. The place was small. Clean. Too clean. I had learned to keep things simple. Less to manage. Less to explain. I sat on the couch and let the quiet settle around me. That was when my phone buzzed again. A message from my brother. This is for the best. You'll understand later. I stared at the screen until it went dark. For a long time I just sat there. I thought about all the times I had stayed late. All the weekends I had covered for him when he was tired. All the money I had put back into the business when things were tight. All the times I had said, "It's fine," when it was not. They thought I was weak because I stayed quiet. They thought I was broke because I lived small. They thought I would disappear now. The way I always did. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the city moved like it always did. People walking dogs. Cars stopping at lights. A woman across the street watering plants. Life did not pause for heartbreak. I pressed my forehead against the glass and closed my eyes. Something shifted. Inside me then. Not anger. Not yet. Something steadier. Heavier. A quiet clarity. I was not confused anymore. I was not imagining it. They had taken something from me. Not just a job. Not just money. They had taken my place. And for the first time. In a very long time, I did not feel like letting it go. I opened my eyes and reached for my phone again. Not to beg. Not to explain. To look. To remember. To start counting everything I had given, everything I had signed, everything I had saved. They thought I had nothing left. They were wrong. Asterisk. Before all of that happened. Before my name came off the wall and my place was quietly taken, my life had already been shrinking in ways most people never noticed. It did not shrink all at once. It happened slowly. So slowly that I told myself it was normal. That this was just what adulthood looked like, that everyone felt tired all the time. That everyone carried a quiet worry in their chest. My days used to start early. Not because I liked mornings, but because it was the only way to keep everything moving. I would wake up before my alarm most days. My eyes would open, and my first thought was always the same. What needs to be handled today? I lived alone in a small apartment. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. A narrow kitchen that barely fit 2 people. I chose it because it was affordable. I stayed because it felt safe. No one asked questions there. No one expected more than I could give. I would make coffee the same way every morning. Measure the grounds. Wait for the water to heat. stand there, while it brewed, staring at nothing. Sometimes I would think about how quiet it was. Other times I would think about how loud my head felt. Then I would get dressed, simple clothes, nothing that stood out. I learned a long time ago that blending in was easier than explaining yourself. Work was where most of my energy went. It always had been. When my brother first started the business, it was just an idea and a borrowed office space. He was excited, full of big plans and late-night talks. He needed help. He needed someone he could trust. At the time, I needed purpose. I needed to feel useful. So when he asked, I said yes without hesitation. I did not ask about pay. I did not ask about titles. I did not ask about ownership. I told myself those things would come later. That family took care of family. In the beginning, it felt true. I handled the things he did not want to. Paperwork, scheduling, customer calls. I learned systems on my own because we could not afford to hire anyone else. When mistakes happened, I fixed them. Quietly. When things went right, I stayed in the background. Mara came later. She was confident, sharp. She spoke like someone who had never doubted herself. When she married my brother, she stepped into the business like it had always been hers. At first, I welcomed her. I thought we would be a team. But teams need balance. And I had already taught them that I would carry more weight without complaining. As the business grew, my role grew too. Just not in ways that showed. I was the one who stayed late when deadlines closed in. The one who answered emails on weekends. The one who filled gaps when people quit or called out. I knew how everything worked because I had touched every part of it. Still, when people talked about leadership, they looked at my brother. When they talked about strategy, they listened to Mara. When they talked about support, they came to me. Support was my label. It followed me everywhere. At home, things were not much different. My parents had always leaned on me more than they should have. I was the steady one, the quiet one, the one who did not need much. When my mother got sick years ago, I was the one who went to appointments. When bills piled up, I was the one who figured out payment plans. When emotions ran high, I learned to lower my voice and make space. My brother had his own life, his own stress, his own dreams. I told myself that was fair. I did not realize how often I put my own needs last until I could not remember what they were. Money was always tight. Not because I was careless, but because I was generous in ways that drained me. I loaned money I never got back. I covered costs without keeping track. I told myself it would balance out eventually. When the business struggled early on, I dipped into my savings without telling anyone. It felt easier that way. No conversations. No guilt placed on them. Just quiet solutions. I remember the night I transferred the money. I sat on my bed with my laptop open, staring at the numbers. My savings were not huge, but they mattered. They represented safety. Independence. I told myself I was investing in our future. In family, I clicked confirm. No one ever asked how much. I gave. As time passed, my role became invisible. People got used to things working. They stopped noticing who made them work. Mara was especially good at speaking in meetings. She had a way of making ideas sound like hers, even when they were built from things I had mentioned casually days before. I noticed. I felt it. But I never called it out. I did not want conflict. I did not want tension. I told myself it was not worth it. There were moments, though. Small ones. Moments that sat in my chest long after they passed. Like the time a client praised the systems we had in place and Mara smiled and said, "Yes, we've really streamlined things." She did not look at me once. Or the time my brother introduced everyone at a company dinner. He talked about his vision. About Mara's leadership. When he got to me, he said, "And she helps out wherever needed." Helps out. I smiled and nodded. Everyone clapped politely. At home that night, I cried in the shower so no one would hear me. Still, I stayed. Because leaving felt like failure. Because staying felt familiar. Because I had built my life around being needed, not being valued. Outside of work, my world was small. A few acquaintances. No close friends. I canceled plans often because I was tired or needed at the office. Over time, people stopped asking. I told myself I liked being alone. Sometimes that was true. Other times, it felt like something I had settled into because it required less explanation. There were nights I would sit on my couch, scrolling through my phone, watching other people's lives unfold. Promotions, vacations, engagements, smiling. Faces in places I had never been. I never felt jealous exactly. Just distant. Like I was watching through glass dot every now and then, a quiet thought would rise. Is this a dot I would push it down? When my finances tightened more, I adjusted, cut costs, walked instead of drove when I could, bought cheaper groceries. I did not tell anyone. Pride mixed with habit kept my mouth closed. Mara noticed, though. She always noticed things that could be used later. You should really take better care of yourself, she said once, looking at my worn shoes. Her voice sounded concerned. Her eyes did not. I'm fine, I said. She smiled. Of course you are. That smile came back to me later, after the meeting, after the folder, after my name disappeared. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. The way decisions started happening without me. The way my access to certain files quietly changed. The way my brothers stopped asking for my input and started informing me instead. I told myself they were busy. That I was imagining it. That I was being sensitive. I had been taught my whole life that being sensitive was a flaw. The day before everything happened, I stayed late again. The office was quiet. Most lights were off. I sat at my desk, finishing a report no one had asked me to do yet. I remember feeling tired in a deep way. Not just physically. Tired of holding everything together without acknowledgement. Tired of shrinking myself to keep peace. I saved the file and shut down my computer. As I stood up, I caught my reflection in the dark screen. I looked older than I felt. Or maybe I felt older than I realized. I thought about quitting then. Just a passing thought. It scared me enough that I laughed softly and shook my head. I did. Not quit. The next morning, my name was gone. Understanding all of this did not happen at once. It came in pieces in the quiet days after. As I replayed conversations. As I noticed patterns I had ignored. I saw how often I had been positioned as the fallback, the safety net, the one who would not make noise. They had learned something about me over the years. They had learned that I would endure. And endurance, when taken for granted, starts to look like weakness to the wrong people. But what they never learned was how much I paid attention, how much I remembered, how carefully I kept records, even when no one asked me to. Because being invisible teaches you to observe, and while they were busy assuming I had nothing, I was quietly carrying more than they ever realized. After the meeting, after the silence settled in, the pressure did not come all at once. It came in small, careful waves. The kind that are easy to explain away if you want to believe the best in people. The first change was access. One morning, I logged in and found that several shared folders were no longer visible. At first, I thought it was a system error. I sent a message to IT. They told me everything looked normal on their end. When I mentioned it to Mara later that day, she barely looked up from her screen. Oh yes, she said. We reorganized permissions. It's just cleaner this way. Cleaner. I nodded, even though my stomach tightened. Those folders contained things I had built, processes I had designed, notes I had written late at night to make sure nothing fell apart. Now I had to ask for access. The second change was tone. Emails that used to say, "Can you handle this?" now said, "Please follow the new procedure." Messages were shorter, colder. Instructions instead of conversations. In meetings, I was spoken to, not spoken with. If I offered an idea, there was a pause. A brief silence where everyone looked at Mara or my brother, waiting for approval before reacting. Sometimes, Mara would repeat what I said a few minutes later, using different words. People nodded then. I stopped speaking as much. That was part of the control. Not telling me to be quiet. Just teaching me that my voice no longer mattered. My brother changed too. He became distant in a way that felt deliberate. He stopped checking in. Stopped asking how I was managing the transition. When I tried to talk to him one evening after work, he sighed like I was exhausting. Can we not do this right now? He said, we've made a decision. I just want to understand. I replied. You always want to understand, he said. Sometimes you just need to accept things. Accept things. I went home that night feeling smaller than I had in years. Financial pressure followed quickly. My reduced hours meant reduced pay, just like they said. What they did not say was how fast it would affect me. Asterisk bills did not wait for transitions. I adjusted again. Cut more. Slept less. Took on freelance work quietly, late at night, so no one at the office would know. There was a strange shame in it. Not because the work was beneath me, but because it confirmed what they already believed. She needs less. She can manage. She always does. Mara started checking in more often, not kindly, carefully. How are things going? She asked one afternoon, leaning against my desk. Fine, I said. She tilted her head. Are you sure? We don't want you to feel stressed. I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded. Inside, something twisted. Her concern felt like a test. Like she was waiting for me to crack so she could justify everything. So I stayed calm. Too calm. Control does not always look like force. Sometimes it looks like watching and waiting. They began excluding me from certain conversations entirely. Meetings would happen without me. Decisions would be announced after the fact. When I asked questions, I was told not to worry about it. You don't need to carry that anymore, Mara said once, smiling. That's a good thing. But it did not feel like relief. It felt like erasure. I started noticing how often my brother deferred to her. How quickly he shut down any discomfort. It was easier to let me be the quiet problem than to face conflict. In his marriage or his business, I understood that, even if it hurt. At night, sleep became harder. My mind replayed moments on a loop. Things I wished I had said. Lines I should have drawn years ago. Sometimes, I would wake up with my heart racing, convinced I had missed something important. That was when I started reviewing old files. At first, it was just to reassure myself, to remind myself of the work I had done, the value I had brought. But as I dug deeper, patterns emerged. Emails where my brother acknowledged loans I had given the company. Messages where Mara asked me to handle legal filings temporarily. Documents with my name on them. Even if no one talked about them anymore, I had kept everything. Out of habit, out of fear, out of a need to prove I was not imagining things. They did not know that. To them, I was disorganized. Emotional. Not business-minded. I let them believe it. The manipulation became quieter, more refined. When I succeeded at something, it was framed as a team effort. When something went wrong, it was traced back to my area. Feedback came through others instead of directly. Corrections without context. Expectations without authority. I began doubting myself. Was I really as capable as I thought? Had I just been lucky before? Had things changed because I had changed? That doubt was the most powerful tool they used. It kept me from pushing back, from demanding clarity, from asking for what I deserved. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation again. Not because I was trying to listen. Just because walls are thin and voices travel. Mara was talking to a manager. She's sensitive, she said. We have to be careful. She takes things personally. The manager laughed softly. Yeah, I've noticed. I stood still in the hallway, my hands shaking. Sensitive. That word again. Always used to explain why I was being left out, why I was being controlled. That night, something shifted. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet decision forming under the weight of everything else. If they believed I was weak, I could use that. If they believed I was broke, I could move unnoticed. If they believed I was done, they would stop watching me closely. I started documenting everything more carefully. Dates, times, changes, conversations. Not out of revenge. Out of self-respect. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped asking for inclusion. Instead, I observed. The power imbalance was still there. They still held my role, my income, my standing. But for the first time, I felt a small sense of control returning, because I knew something they did not. I knew where the bodies were buried. Not literally, but in contracts, in agreements, in quiet promises made and never followed through on. They had built their confidence on the idea that I would never challenge them. They were right. In a way, I was not going to challenge them loudly. I was going to wait. Asterisk, I did not plan the turning point. It came together slowly, like something heavy settling into place after being carried too long. It started with a mistake. Not mine. Mara sent an email late one evening. It was meant for my brother. I know because his name was in the greeting. But my address was there too. She realized it a minute later and tried to recall it. Too late. The message was short, but it changed everything. We need to finalize the ownership adjustment before she notices, it said. The paperwork from years ago could complicate things if she ever looks closely. My hands went cold. I read it again. Slowly, carefully. The words did not blur. They became sharper. Ownership adjustment. Paperwork from years ago. Complicate things. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. My heart was beating fast, but my thoughts were calm in a way I had not felt in months. This was not about my role or my hours, or my pay. This was about something bigger. I did not reply. I did not forward it. I saved it. Then I opened a folder on my computer that I had not touched in a while. Inside were documents I had kept without knowing exactly why. Old contracts, early agreements, emails from when the business was just an idea and trust was still spoken out. Loud. I started reading. Years ago, before Mara was involved, my brother and I had sat at a small table with coffee and excitement and fear. We had talked about building something together. About fairness. About protecting each other. He had asked me to help him formalize things because he did not understand the paperwork. I had done it. Carefully. Thoroughly. Asterisk, what I found that night made my breath catch. My name was there. Not as support. Not as an assistant. As a co-owner. Not 50%. But enough. Enough to matter. Enough to require my consent for changes. Enough to make everything they had done very questionable. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Shock. Sadness. And something like relief. I was not imagining things. They had known. That was why the control had tightened. Why access disappeared. Why decisions happened without me. Why my role had been quietly reduced instead of openly discussed. They were trying to push me out without waking me up. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I made copies. Digital and physical. I organized everything by date. I printed the email from Mara and placed it on top of the stack. In the morning, I called a lawyer. It was not dramatic. My voice did not shake. I did not cry. I simply said, I need to understand my rights. The lawyer listened, asked questions, read what I sent. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm and clear. You have a strong position, she said. Stronger than they likely want you to realize. I thanked her and hung up. That was when the fear hit, not fear of them. Fear of what this would mean. For my family. For my sense of self. For the version of me that had survived by staying quiet. I sat at my kitchen table and put my head in my hands. This would change everything. I gave myself one full day to feel it. The grief. The anger. The disappointment. Then I moved. The lawyer advised a formal notice. Not a threat. Not an accusation. A request for clarification. So I sent it. I asked for a meeting. I attached copies of the documents. I asked to discuss the changes that had been made without my consent. The reply came quickly. Asterisk. My brother called me instead. His voice was tight. Why are you doing this? I'm asking a question, I said. You know what this looks like, he said. After everything we've done for you. I closed my eyes. After everything we've done. I corrected quietly. There was silence. We didn't think you'd ever. He stopped himself. That was all I needed to hear. The meeting happened 2 days later. Same conference room. Same table. But the Air felt different. Mara did not smile this time. The folder in front of me was thicker now, not just theirs. Mine too. I did not raise my voice. I did not accuse. I simply laid out the facts, dates, signatures, agreements. I watched their faces change as understanding set in. This was not a misunderstanding. This was exposure. Mara spoke first. We were trying to protect the company. By removing me, I said. You were struggling, she replied. Financially, emotionally. And that gave you the right to act without me. I asked. My brother stared at the table. He looked smaller than I remembered. The lawyer joined by phone. She spoke clearly, professionally, without emotion. Power shifted in that moment, not loudly, but completely. They could not dismiss me now. They could not minimize me. They had to acknowledge me. The truth was out, not as a weapon. As reality. I did not ask for revenge. I did not ask to hurt them. I asked for what was mine. And for the first time they listened. The days after the meeting were quieter than I expected. Not peaceful. Just still. There were no angry messages. No dramatic confrontations. No slammed doors. What followed instead was a careful kind of distance. Like everyone was afraid to touch the situation too hard, worried it might break in the wrong way. The lawyer handled most of the communication after that. That was intentional. Not because I was hiding, but because I had learned something important. I did not need to explain myself anymore. What was mine had been proven. On paper. With dates and signatures that did not care about feelings or family history. The first real change came in writing. An official acknowledgement of my ownership. Clear language, no soft words, no vague promises. Just facts. Seeing it felt strange. Like reading about someone else's life. For years, I had been treated like someone who was lucky to be included. Now, the same people had to recognize that I had never been an extra. I was part of the foundation. They tried to keep things professional, polite, controlled. Mara avoided me unless necessary. When she did speak, her voice was careful, measured. The confidence was still there, but it no longer had teeth. My brother changed too. He became quieter, less certain. Like someone who had to relearn where the ground was. We did not talk about feelings. Not really, and I realized something surprising. I did not need that conversation anymore. For a long time I thought closure meant hearing someone say they were sorry. Or admitting they were wrong. But what I needed was different. I needed my dignity back. That came through action. Not words. The resolution was not dramatic. There was no public fallout. No scenes. No raised voices. Instead, there were adjustments. Financial ones. Structural ones. Boundaries that were finally written instead of assumed. I chose not to stay involved in daily operations. That was my decision. Not theirs. I negotiated a buyout over time. Fair, documented, enforced. They did not argue much. They could not afford to. When the first payment came through, I stared at my bank account for a long time. Not because of the number, but because of what it represented. Recognition. Not generosity. Not pity. Recognition. I paid off debts quietly. Took a deep breath I felt like I had been holding for years. Bought groceries without checking every price. I did not celebrate. I rested. That was new. I started waking up without the immediate weight of responsibility pressing on my chest. Mornings felt slower. Lighter. I made coffee and drank it while it was still hot. Some days the grief would come back. Not sharp. Just soft and sad. Grief for the relationship I thought I had with my brother. Grief for the version of myself that believed being quiet was the same as being kind. I let myself feel it without rushing to fix it. That was part of the justice too. We did not become close again. Not really, but we became honest in a distant way. He apologized once. Briefly. Awkwardly. I didn't realize how far it went, he said. I believed that he believed it. I did not argue. I did not correct him. Some truths do not need agreement to be true. Mara never apologized. She did not have to. Her loss was not public. It was internal. She could no longer move pieces without resistance. Could no longer assume silence meant consent. That was enough. As for me, I changed in quieter ways. I stopped shrinking. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just steadily. I took up space in my own life. Said no when I meant no. Asked for clarity when something felt off. I rebuilt slowly. With intention. New routines. New work. New relationships that did not depend on how much I could give without asking. I learned that strength does not always look loud. Sometimes it looks like preparation, like patience. Like knowing when to wait and when to speak. They thought I lived carefully. They were wrong on both counts. What they never saw was the discipline it took to endure without losing yourself. The awareness built in silence. The power of knowing exactly what you hold. Taking everything back did not mean taking from them. It meant returning to myself. And that. Now give me 10 to 15 image prompts according to this story. Here are 12 high-quality image prompts designed to match the emotional tone. These are written for cinematic YouTube storytelling visuals, perfect for AI image generation or stock-style visuals. Each prompt reflects a key emotional beat, not just events.